Hi, and welcome to Emerald Isle Vacation Home Specialist. I am your host, Dennis Richkovsky. This episode is all about addressing a very important question that my real estate clients ask. Will I enjoy this second home enough to warrant making this investment? This question typically arises about the time my client and I are preparing the offer to purchase. And in response to that question, I tell my client the following true story. It is a story about another family that asked the very same question a number of years ago. It is a story about my family. And my story begins when I discovered Emerald Isle while a student at Duke University. Back then, when students in the marine biology program located in Beaufort returned to Duke's main campus in Durham, they needed a place to stay. So a few of us enterprising classmates would offer to swap rooms for a free beach weekend. We discovered Morehead City, Atlantic Beach, and eventually Emerald Isle. And the beaches, well, they were so natural, so clean, and so free of people. Not at all like the beaches I was familiar with at the Jersey Shore. My wife, Marcia, was even more passionate about Emerald Isle. After we married, we spent virtually every summer vacation, sometimes with family, sometimes with friends, enjoying the sun, sand, salt, and sea here in Emerald Isle. And like other vacationers, we would occasionally look at homes for sale. After some 12 years of vacationing and looking at homes in Emerald Isle, Marcia said to me one Thanksgiving late in the 1990s, "Let's buy a beach house." Happy wife means happy life. So I sent away for real estate magazines and I plotted all of the oceanfront homes for sale in Emerald Isle on a map that a geologist, Orrin Pilkey, published, showing the safest areas to live in Emerald Isle. When I was finished, I had 32 homes for us to visit. So in January 1997, my family drove the 3 hours from Durham to Emerald Isle to meet with our real estate agent. We had identified 16 homes to view that weekend. A daunting task, to be sure. My wife and I were charged with looking at the houses, and our two daughters were responsible for examining the beaches. The following weekend, we looked at another 16 houses. After 2 weekends of looking at homes and beaches, we compared notes and whittled our potential candidates down to 2. We spent hours agonizing over the merits of both finalists. Eventually, we phoned our agent and he sent us a purchase agreement. We began filling it out for our top choice, a home in Pine Knoll Shores, when Marcia and I looked at each other and said, "Massive." That was the nickname we gave to our second choice, a duplex in Emerald Isle we ultimately made our offer on. We offered to purchase one half, the east side of the duplex, in 1 year, and the other half, the west side, the next. We wrote switcheroo on the cover page of the fax we sent back to our agent. Our unusual offer was accepted because the owners, it turned out, bought the duplex some 12 years earlier in exactly the same way. The closing happened in early May 1997, and we celebrated Mother's Day in the east side of the duplex. We visited the next 3 weekends before the home was given over to the property manager and the vacationers who rented the home from June through August. We returned for Labor Day weekend and every other weekend with our daughters until the end of the year. We celebrated one daughter's birthday in October, Thanksgiving, and New Year's. In early 1998, we closed on the west half of the duplex. We celebrated Marcia's birthday and our other daughter's birthday, along with Valentine's and President's Day weekends and the ACC basketball tournament. We vacationed for a week in March and again in late May before we turned the duplex over to our property manager and vacationers. We returned for Labor Day weekend and just about every other weekend through the fall and early winter. Rinse and repeat, year after year after year. Friends visited, family visited. As our daughters grew older and went off to college, more and more, Marcia and I would drive to Emerald Isle for a quiet weekend. We walked the beach, collected shells, watched television, and prepared meals. Then our daughters started using the home, and one daughter's boyfriend proposed to her on the beach in front of our house. Eventually, 3-day weekends turned into 4, and a few years ago, we moved to Emerald Isle full time. As the amount of time we spent in Emerald Isle changed over the years, so did our house. We replaced the T111 siding with hardy plank. We replaced the wooden windows and frames with vinyl. We gutted and rebuilt bathrooms and kitchens. We painted a lot. Roofs were replaced, as were HVAC units. One off-season, Marcia noted that many of our guests came from Ohio. And she said, Dad drives all the way from Ohio to watch little Johnny go into the water so Dad can drink beer. But if the ocean is too rough, little Johnny doesn't go into the water and Dad doesn't get to drink his beer. Marcia went on to say, if we put in pools, little Johnny can always go in the water and Dad can always drink his beer. Smart lady. We put in pools. Now we own the only duplex on Bogue Banks with 2 pools. And the duplex is fully booked year after year after year. Of course, nothing is a bed of roses. Oceanfront is brutal on a house. Exterior paint that should last 15 years doesn't make it past 7. HVAC units rust before your eyes. If you rent to vacationers, you have heard it all. From the lady who stuffs the refrigerator and freezer with a week's worth of warm groceries at 5 p.m., and calls the management agency at 5:15 p.m. to say that your refrigerator has conked out. To the folks who have every window and door open in July to smell the ocean and wonder why your AC is not working. And then there's the guest who calls to let you know that a plate has a chip in it when the ocean is visible from every room in the house. And the property manager always is requesting us to remove, replace, and/or renovate perfectly good furnishings, or the decorator is insisting that you must have 40-inch flat screens in every room and granite on every countertop. And don't get me started on the so-called storm of the century that seems to happen nearly every year. We have experienced, paid for, and recovered from the effects of high winds, hurricanes, nor'easters, and beach erosion time and again. And yet, Marcia and I would tell you, just like I tell my clients, that after marriage and having children, purchasing this oceanfront duplex in Emerald Isle was and still is hands down the very best decision we have ever made in our lives together. In my humble opinion, the take-home message of this story is simple. All of us can use a little more Emerald Isle in our lives. And when you decide to add more time in Emerald Isle to your lives, go to my website, www.eihomesforsale.com, and request my free guide to living where you vacation. Or text your email address to 919-308-2292. You'll be glad that you did. Return next week to the same bat channel at the same bat time of 9 a.m. on Thursday for another episode of Emerald Isle Vacation Home Specialist.